At 100%. Go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it. And good morning, committee members and other parties of interest. This oral presentation for RPS-25-00191, Architectural/Engineering Services for Brandon Fire Station Number 11 replacement, is being held in part by the Communications Media Technology. Active participation will be for committee members and presenting firms only. A recording of the meeting will be made available to the public and all interested parties after the meeting is ended. Please be advised that the cone of silence is still in effect. All meetings and correspondence must include me. My name is Ethan Kersey, and I'm the senior buyer for this project. Again, for the record, this meeting is being recorded and has been publicly noticed. At this time, I will ask each committee member to introduce themselves for the record, beginning with the committee chairman.
Hi, Sarah Williams with Capital Programs and Architecture Services Manager.
Svcs, Capital Programs, Architecture Services.
Mario Boa, Capital Programs, Architect.
Chris Rideout, Hillsborough County Fire Rescue.
Thank you, guys. Our presenters will have a total of 30 minutes, 15 minutes for presentation, and 15 for Q&A. I'll be timing the presentation and will announce when there are 2 minutes remaining in your presentation. Immediately following the presentation, we move on to the question portion. I'll also track your time there and provide a 2-minute warning for the final questions. So, Fleischman Garcia Architects and Planners, please begin your presentation. I will start your time once you begin to talk.
Good morning, Hillsborough County. My name is John Kelly. I'm Fleischman Garcia Maslowski Architecture's fire station specialist. I've been responsible for more than 70 fire station commissions, 18 different fire departments, and that includes 14 projects for Hillsborough County. I'm joined this morning by Jeff Pelzinski. Jeff joined our fire station team about 25 years ago. I think he's logged something like 30 fire stations to date. 33. He's doing construction administration for 3 fire stations in Pasco County right now. We greatly appreciate the opportunity to join you this morning. You're already familiar with our project organizational chart. The key item on the chart is absolutely every firm on this chart has done fire station projects previously, so it's a highly experienced team. One thing that's a little bit unusual about us and sets us apart from other firms is we are currently celebrating the 25-year anniversary of our first fire station for Hillsborough County Fire Rescue, which is indeed fire station number 11 in Brandon. 2 of the firms that we work with on that job, our mechanical electrical engineer and our construction cost estimator, are also part of our team on this project. And we feel very strongly that our knowledge of Fire Station 11 from that 25-year-old project has contributed greatly to our understanding of some of the issues you've got to address for the current project to be a success. First thoughts. Here are 3 key things that are going to drive the progress of the design and drive the cost of construction. Fire Station number 11 has to remain fully operational throughout the construction of a multi-million-dollar project on a constricted suburban site. We're going to present in detail how we think that can be achieved in a logical phased manner. The 3,360 square foot apparatus bays are to be retained and renovated. Let's keep in mind they were designed in 1978 when the building codes were far less rigorous than they are right now. And the county has also expressed a preference for drive-through bays. Converting from back-in bays to drive-through bays will have a major impact on the site plan of the station. So let's take a look at these 3 major design criteria and see what we make of them. In 1978, the design wind velocity was probably 110 miles an hour. It's now 154 miles an hour under the Florida Building Code currently in effect. The standard building code of the Southern Building Code, Congress is the one who set the 110 mile per hour criterion, and that would have determined how the masonry walls of the apparatus bays were constructed, how the roof was framed, and so forth. We don't know how those walls were reinforced. We don't know whether the 8-inch concrete block, we would use 12-inch today and always have in Hillsborough County, has been properly reinforced to take the wind load imposed by the much, much higher wind velocity. The Florida Building Code and the implications for that wind speed increase have to be investigated. It would be wonderful if the county has the original structural engineering drawings for the building. I don't know if you do. Our project 25 years ago was essentially interior renovation and remodeling, fire sprinklering, adding a force main, getting rid of the leach field. Our testing company, our geotechnical firm, Tierra, can perform tests on those walls to see if there's proper reinforcing in them. We've got a lot of experience in hurricane hardening existing fire stations. Some years ago, we did fire station hardening for 4 projects for Seminole Fire Rescue, and the one that was most similar in concept to yours was fire station number 31. It was built back in 1974. It was built using 8-inch thick concrete block walls that were unreinforced. Our structural engineers analyzed the wind pressures on the building and determined that major reinforcing of those walls would be essential. What we did was we added filled cells at 48 inches on center all around the entire perimeter of the building. A number 5 bar was drilled into the foundation, ran all the way up the filled cell, and was drilled and epoxied into the tie beam. We cut slots into the concrete block, put the bars in place, and then filled the void with fine grout. We replaced all the doors and windows. So we're very familiar with the process that we think is pretty likely to be required if you keep that existing apparatus-based structure. Another issue that we have to think about is the very unusual fact that this building was apparently originally built as a steel frame structure with steel bar joists and corrugated metal deck. And at some point in the life of the building, wood trusses were set down on top of the existing flat roof construction. An additional course of block was added on top of the existing concrete tie beam. And we don't know much about that block. We don't know if the blocks were filled solid. We don't know if they were doweled down into the concrete beam to hold them securely in place when they're subjected to wind load. Then they have simply been mortared in place, and we have no idea whether that existing beam would have been properly cleaned so that mortar would adhere and provide uplift resistance to the system. The attachment of those trusses is extremely important in terms of the ability to resist wind lift. We don't know if the trusses were simply clipped to that concrete block to a 2x8 wood plate, perhaps. We don't know if the wood plate was properly secured down to the tie beam. Long story short, there's a big unknown right here in this unusual building, which has both a steel frame structure and a wood truss structure. And we need to be sure that it's all been properly attached and tied together so it doesn't blow apart if it's subject to hurricane wind forces. Our structural engineer needs to do an investigation of the conditions. We also don't know how the plywood deck was attached to the wood trusses. It should have been attached by taking 8-penny nails and nailing the deck to the trusses at 6 inches on center in the field of the roof and the perimeter. We have no idea what the nailing pattern was, but we need to be sure it meets that criteria. What we're saying is, let's avoid surprise structural problems with a pre-designed study. Let's identify the scope and cost of all this work instead of being surprised by it once construction is underway. We want to avoid having to pay additional subcontractor labor and material costs, and we want to avoid paying extended general conditions costs for the construction manager if these problems are discovered once construction begins. Change to drive-through bays. That's very, very significant. Station 11 is currently running, we believe, based on online information per firefandom.com, 3 pieces of apparatus, an E1 ALS engine, an E1 ladder, and an International Durastar rescue truck. 3 pieces of apparatus. Currently, they all back in off the adjoining street, Ridgewood Avenue. If you want to have drive-through operation, the first thing we looked at is, well, we've got doors in the front, maybe with doors in the back, and you just pull in and turn around, but you can't. There's absolutely not enough room for the vehicles to have a proper turning radius and move out of the back of the building. The only way to get drive-through operation is to move in a north-south direction, either entering from the south or entering from the north. The distance between the back of the building and that property line is only 38 feet 6 inches, and that's nowhere near enough to achieve back in operation just by opening up the back of the building. If we put 3 new doors in the north and south walls and access the bays from the north and south, there are 2 existing steel columns in the middle of those bays that hold up the steel frame that holds up the original steel deck, and we can position the apparatus nicely between the 3 bays created by the 2 columns. The newly acquired residential lots to the north make it possible for the apparatus to exit or arrive from north of the bays, and we'll show you a plan of this very soon. Parking and stormwater treatment also located north of the building on the newly acquired residential lots. The new living and operations wing programmed at 4,440 square feet We expect about 3,640 square feet to be located north and east of the bays, and then a small addition on the west side of the bays where we'll put bunker gear storage, general station storage, and so forth. This is how that might all shape up. And I want to emphasize, we're not saying if you hire Fleischman Garcia, this is the design. The purpose of this is to serve as a catalyst for discussion and dialogue, but we thought it's easier to react to something than describe what you want in the abstract. So here you can see the 3 bays entering either from the north or the south, stormwater detention on the north side of the site and parallel to Ridgewood Avenue. And Jeff is going to show you how we get there in phases, absolutely necessary because the project will be completely occupied and functional throughout the construction. We've listed all the phases. You can see there's a lot of text up here. I'm not going to read all this to you. It's vastly more desirable for Jeff to show you graphically how we got to that plan we showed you in a series of steps.
So phase 1, we would start by demolishing the 2 existing residential buildings on the north end of the site, remove the communication tower and its 2 control buildings, and remove just the carport that's currently serving the fire station. We would leave the pavement that the carport is sitting on, however. Phase 2, the CM would go ahead and set up his laydown area for storage of construction materials and parking and his trailer. This will be all the way to the north end of the site so we don't disrupt the ongoing operations of the fire station. We would also put a portable building in for the living quarters to act a place for the firefighters to stay. And that would be on the existing paved area that we just vacated. Phase 3, we would go ahead and move the firefighters into the temporary quarters, demolish the existing living quarters. There's an unusual situation, though, with the 2nd-story roof of the existing living quarters that affects the roof of the apparatus bay that's going to stay in place and operational. So it would have to be patched pretty carefully so that the firefighters could still use the apparatus bay. Once the firefighters can move into the new temporary living quarters, we can build the new living quarters up here on the east side of the site, build the new parking and drive area for firefighters parking, all while the operations of the fire are working out of the existing apparatus bay. Phase 5, we can go ahead and move the firefighters out of the apparatus bay by putting a temporary carport, again, down here where we can move the temporary living quarters out. Firefighters move back into the brand new living quarters. We put that carport back where the original carport was, but large enough to handle 3 pieces of equipment. We can go ahead and demolish the existing parking area because they have the new parking area to operate out. Phase 6, the firefighters are now operating their apparatus out of the temporary apparatus carport. We can remodel and do all the upgrades that John mentioned to the apparatus bay. Go ahead and build the aprons so that we can get the drive-through service in the apparatus bay. Phase 7, firefighters can begin operations in the new apparatus bay with the new aprons, a complete drive-through system. We can remove the temporary apparatus bay and the pavement it sits on. Phase 8, we can go ahead and, now that this is all open, we can build the first of the 2 retention ponds, build the little storage area to the west side of the brand new apparatus bay. And finally, in the last phase, CM can remove his laydown area. We can finish up the site work, including the retention ponds to the north.
Thank you, Jeff.
Have a little bit over 2 minutes.
All right, why select Fleischman Garcia? As the architects for the year 2000 Fire Station No. 11 remodeling project, we're already very familiar with the critical characteristics and the challenges of the building and site. We feel strongly that no one knows the station's idiosyncrasies and potential problems better than we do. We're very comfortable in the depth of designing using Hillsborough County's preferred architectural style, include Central Brandon Fire Station 45 that we completed 3 years ago, Ruskin Station number 17, which was a Firehouse Magazine award winner, Riverview Station 16. All 14 of our Hillsborough County stations, including new stations, renovation, remodeling, and additions, have been cost-effective solutions. Every design milestone was met on time. All facilities were completed without a single change order arising from any errors or omissions in our plans or specifications. And we presented a viable conceptual site plan for your consideration, showing a phasing strategy that would actually allow this project to be constructed while the existing station remains in operation, intended to be, as I said, a starting point for dialogue and discussion, not presented to you as something that's we're construing as a final design. And then we feel strongly that the construction manager needs to develop a very detailed written continuity of operations plan. You consider how many millions of dollars worth of work we're going to be putting on this site. We don't dare jeopardize the operation of emergency vehicles that are going to operate 24/7, 365. We think the plan should be submitted in writing to fire rescue and capital improvements for review and comment. We'd also like to see continuous television surveillance of the apron. And we think the fire station's phone alarm and denunciation system should be connected to the contractor's trailer so that whenever a truck leaves the property, everyone on the site knows it. Lastly, specifying for value, controlling cost, always important. Every specification we write, even in construction manager jobs where there's often a concern that we just handed this job to one firm, there goes the competition and there goes the pricing. Every specification we write is used as a concept we call specifying for value. It controls quality, it assures competitive market correct pricing, and achieves genuine construction value. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We'll move on to the question period. I'll start the timer again when you guys ask the first question.
Thank you guys for that presentation. I had a quick question about the apparatus bay. So if we have to go through all the efforts of doing the hardening because that was built so long ago, what do you see from a cost perspective of doing that hardening versus taking the apparatus bay away?
Obviously, but I knew that question would come up. It's very, very difficult to answer without doing a detailed cost analysis of what the new building built from scratch, fully code compliant would cost versus restoring and hardening the existing building. I think my honest gut feeling is there would probably be a small savings from renovating and remodeling the existing building, cutting in all that new reinforcing steel in the perimeter walls, properly tying down the trusses to the building so they don't give it up in a hurricane. I think that would save a little bit of money. I'm also aware of the fact that that existing bay structure is currently 55 feet wide inside to inside and 59 feet deep. And that is a small area for 3 contemporary firefighting vehicles. I'd love to see the building grow 5 to 10 feet in every direction, and there's room on the site to do it. But that's where we badly need fire rescue's input. We've never designed a fire station without talking to the fire chief, so at some point I hope we bring fire rescue in and get your thoughts on it. I'd say it's small savings. There are compromises because of its rather compact size, and only fire rescue can tell us how badly they'd like to fix it.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
I was curious, Chris is always harping on firefighters liking it dark. Do you have any recent projects where you've developed any kind of newer ways to deal with windows and dorms?
Every one of our current stations in Pasco County that we're working on several as a prototype. We put blackout curtains in every bunk room, and they're pretty effective. There's not just mini blinds, but actual blackout curtains that they can lower, and it really darkens the room. Whenever I go to visit one of those stations now, those curtains are always down, and it's very dark in there. We're very aware, we've done so many fire stations, we're very aware of firefighters' health and safety and their preferences. They work 24 hours a day. Sometimes they work in the middle of the night, they have to sleep during the day. We're aware of that. We put a lot of attention into our bunk rooms and the rest of the station to make it comfortable for them and adaptable for whatever it is they need.
And we've seen fire stations, not ours, of course, but where there are no blackout shades, we've seen the aluminum foil taped up inside the glass. It looks terrible. Yes, looks terrible.
We've actually evolved recently to where, when we can, life safety codes notwithstanding, just removing windows in bunk rooms if and when we can. They're just going with a windowless situation.
It's not a code requirement. Because of the way the stations are designed, plenty of means of egress.
And they're fully fire sprinkled.
Right, sure.
That's key.
Absolutely.
You can actually go without windows if that's what you choose to do.
Continuing on the path of health and safety, what have you done before, or what would you plan to do in reference to decontamination? You know, a lot of times they go out and they're placed in contaminated environments, carcinogens and all that, and you come back, and how do you deal with that, those steps of coming back contaminated, getting decontaminated and back into resting? So
That's become an extremely important issue because cancer has become a terrible menace in the fire service. It's the leading cause of line of duty deaths, and it's actually the leading cause of death for firefighters who retired. For the last 8 to 10 years, there's a design principle called hot zoning that we've incorporated. I'm sure you've heard the term before. For about the last 8 years, we've fortunately had fire departments and tell us this is what they want us to do. It recognizes there are 3 zones in a fire station. There's the hot zone, which is the apparatus phase. That's where diesel, which is diesel exhaust, which is a known contaminant, can expose firefighters to even more hazards than they were exposed to on the fire field. So you move from the hot zone to the decontamination area, which is known as the warm zone. And we have decontamination equipment, not only for equipment, but toilets and showers. So firefighters can cleanse themselves of whatever hazardous chemicals they may have been exposed to in the fire field, change into a fresh set of clothes that they keep in lockers. And only after they're fully contaminated do they move into the cool zone or the green zone, which is a living operations area. We're now doing that universally. It was a big topic of discussion at the Fiero conference 10 years ago. That's the Fire Industry Education and Resource Organization, which is a national advocacy group for firefighters' interests and fire station design. And they've been pushing hot zoning at least since 12 years ago. And we did that for the first time, Fire Station 45 in Hillsborough County. Am I right?
Station 45 had one decontamination restroom that was accessible from the apparatus, but firefighters could go in there and decontaminate before they went into the living quarters. That's the first one we did for Hillsborough County. We've done much larger decontamination suites for Pasco counties, but they have 12 bunk stations that are much larger. They have either 4 or 5 decontamination showers in there that are used only to decontaminate. They're separate from the regular bunk showers. We also put lockers in those suites so that there's a complete clean change of clothes for the firefighters to change into after they shower. And there's a laundry room, a decontamination laundry room in that suite where all their contaminated clothing goes directly into and gets decontaminated before any of it gets into the water. So we're well versed in that. And again, it's something that we would have to talk to fire rescue about and see how they want to implement it and what works for them to see how we would design that.
Yeah, and speaking of the engine room being the area where there's most contamination from diesel exhaust, we've dealt with diesel exhaust evacuation in several different ways. We've always had a central diesel exhaust system, a large exhaust fan, probably 6,000 CFM, that's capable of providing a complete air change in the entire engine room with only 5 minutes in only 5 minutes time. More recently, in several of our Pasco County stations, we've installed source capture systems where an exhaust hose actually clamps onto the end of the tailpipe and the system turns on and sucks the diesel exhaust out of the engine and blows it outside without ever dispersing it into the engine room. We did that in a number of stations, but Pasco has found that many times firefighters just don't want to get out of the engine and connect the hose. And if that doesn't happen, they pretty much wasted their money on a $70,000 mechanically complex exhaust system. We investigated the possibility of using source capture systems for Hillsborough County Fire Rescue maybe 8 or 9 years ago. I went over to Temple Terrace Station 1, had a plumb vent system in place. It was broken the day I got there. The station captain told me the guys never get out of the truck to connect the hose before they pull into the bays. So I don't think Temple Terrace will do it anymore, but I think there's some skepticism on the value of that and its expense. When you've got a central exhaust system like we provide, you've got fresh air in 5 minutes, I think that's probably good enough. But that's fire rescue's fault, not ours.
Sure. Seems like an extra step, operational step.
Yeah, we've had,
Almost like you need a comb to, rather than connecting a hose, a comb that you back into. That's right. You know what I'm saying, like something.
we've had great success with the ventilation system at 45 and others where it's that rapid air exchange.
And it's all automatic. As soon as the doors are activated, it switches on the air evacuation system automatically.
Yeah, there's a limit switch in the door mechanism, and as soon as the door is fully open, it turns the system on. It runs for 15 or 20 minutes. You can also turn the exhaust system on manually. There may come a time when you've got a cleaning agent or paint that has dispersed into the atmosphere of the engine room, and you want to exhaust the engine room for that purpose. So you spin the dial, run it for 15 minutes. You can flip it on and run it forever.
So that's like a sequence of operation.
Yes, that's correct.
John, how much time?
5 more minutes.
5 more is great. John, would you talk about the schedules, you know, how are you gonna be the schedules? You know,
Well, I'm expecting that the organization of deliverables would require schematic design, followed by design development, followed probably by 50 or 60% CDs, 90% CDs, and 100% CDs. We'll discuss those milestones with you. We've never failed to hit the target date in all the time we've been working for you since the year 2000, fire station number 11.
so we're confident with the schedules.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We wouldn't have done 70 fire commissions for 18 departments if we didn't meet our time schedule. We've never blown a deadline, ever.
I have a question about Station 45. We use this as a prototype station now. Is there anything from when this station was done to the more recent stations you've done that you would make modifications to this as a prototype for future stations?
45, as you know, was built on a really tight site. We really had to squeeze things down. There's certain things that personally I would like to see a little bit larger. One is definitely the decontamination area. There's only one decontamination shower in there, and there's no decontamination laundry. We would definitely like to add those elements. The kitchen dining day room was a little bit smaller than I think is logical for the number of firefighters that will be using it. And even the apparatus bay there was a little bit tighter. If you notice, between the doors, we really like to get enough space between the doors to get all the apparatus for the coiling system to fit nicely. Here, it's extremely tight because this dimension was so constricted on that very, very tight site. If indeed we were able to replace the apparatus bay on Station 11, that would be first and foremost one of our things we would look at. We did, however, in our conceptual study here, work that out, and we do have plenty of space for 3 fire apparatus to fit in that apparatus bay now. If that's adequate for you, if you only think you're only going to need 3 in the future, that's fine, that'll work. If you need more, then we really need to look at the size of the apparatus bay.
Do you know how many bunks and toilet rooms you programmed for Fire Station 11? I'm kind of curious what drove your floor areas. The original Fire Station 11 has got 8 bunks and 2 toilets on the second level, 4 bunks and 2 toilets on the lower level. Just wondering what's your target for the new Station 11 remodeling project?
Sure, presently, we run a truck there, which is 3 first responders, and a 3-person rescue, which is 3 first responders. So that puts us at a need for 6. If we could get to that 10 and provide some extra bunk rooms, that allows us then to bring another apparatus there, or when we have visitors from other stations that we need to house. So that's kind of what the baseline calculations were.
All right.
Jeff, I think you did a great job of just summarizing some of the changes at 45. I would agree wholeheartedly. Decon space, we were limited with what we started with, but the decon could be improved upon, and the width of the apparatus bays are spot on.
This site was a bowling alley.
Yeah, that was,
It's very narrow, yeah.
yeah.
2 minutes left, so one more question.
Question I have in reference to Mansour talked about schedule. What about budget? How do you feel about the budget? How comfortable do you feel that we can achieve what we want to achieve in lead requirements? Chris always talks about the robustness of the materials that we want to put in fire stations. So that's probably a higher spec material. How comfortable do you feel from this to what may be required now within the budget that we have?
I mean, from going from 45 to the current building?
From this.
The only figure I've seen published was $6 million for the entire construction all in. And I'm comfortable with that number. I mean, I don't think we're going to be strapped. I think we can provide a resilient, sustainable, livable building for that kind of money. Fortunately, this site has its limitations because it's in this little narrow suburban strip of land. But if you look at some of our Pasco County fire stations where we're putting 40,000 cubic yards of dirt just to make the property buildable, this is going to require very little fill and relatively modest site improvement costs. What do you think, Jeff?
And if you do definitely are going to go with a CM, we would like to get the CM involved early. Work with him hand in hand through the various phases of design to be sure that we stay on the target budget. If it goes hard bid, which I hope it doesn't, but if it does, then we would have our cost estimator involved early on and make sure that we meet the target budget all the way throughout the project, not wait till the end and see where we are and then have to go back and redesign.
And along that line, we really need to know what kind of reinforcing is in the walls of the old engine room. Do we really have to cut in rebar 48 inches on center around the entire perimeter? Are the trusses adequately anchored to the top of that existing concrete tie beam? Was that course of block just acting as a spacer? There needs to be some serious structural investigation so that we don't have unknowns coming up to bite us at the end of the job.
Thank you, guys. Okay, that will conclude the presentation for Fleischman Garcia Maslowski. I will stop the recording.
Thank you very much.
Okay, John, thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Jeff.